My grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, 12 generations of grandmothers back, more or less, was standing in a field in the Kalahari Basin when the Varath Harvest Authority came the first time. She was not taken. That is the central fact of everything I am, everything this hall is, and everything the people who arrived in those 7 vessels this morning are about to learn. The Varath came in the 48th year of what we now call the extraction window, not a war, not an invasion in the way you might imagine. No armies, no fire. They simply descended, sorted, and took. 11 days. The selection criteria have never been fully decoded, even after 800,000 years of study, though the working theory in most academic circles is that they were looking for a particular protein expression marker in the limbic tissue. What we know for certain is that they took 4,219,644,008 people. They left 900 million. My grandmother, the original one, 12 generations removed, was not the kind of woman who wept in fields. The surviving accounts describe her as someone who organized, who counted, who, in the hours after the ships left, walked her district and wrote down every name she could find of every person who was gone, not the ones who remained, the ones who were taken. She filled 14 handheld logbooks in 3 days, in a handwriting so small and precise it required optical magnification to read even then, and she sent copies in every direction she could think of. She understood something, 12 generations ago, that the Varath Harvest Authority apparently did not. The moment you take someone, they become a debt, and debts, properly recorded, accrue. I am Solon Marin. I am the senior keeper of the Varath name registry at the Solon Recovery Hall, and this morning, I walked across the same basin floor where my grandmother stood, in the shadow of the hall she could not have imagined, and I watched 7 Varath harvest vessels drop through our atmosphere like stones through still water. The hall is 340 kilometers at its longest axis. It is not a museum. It is not a monument in any ceremonial sense, though people sometimes mistake it for one when they see it from the air. The pale resonance towers, the archive galleries running the length of the basin in precise mathematical rows, the amber light of the registry index burning across the north face 24 hours a day. It is a working archive. It has been a working archive for 799,600 years, give or take the first 4 centuries, when we were still developing the cataloging system. What it contains, 4,219,644,008 names. Every one cross-referenced against extraction location, estimated extraction time, confirmed protein expression profile where recoverable, and family lineage traced forward through the 900 million who were left. Every single one. When the lead Varath vessel transmitted its approach authorization on the old harvest frequency, the same frequency they used 800,000 years ago, which struck me as a level of administrative consistency that would be almost admirable under different circumstances, I was in the primary archive corridor running the quarterly index audit. I finished the audit. Then I walked to the reception gallery and waited. They sent 3 of them down, the fleet commander, a senior harvest assessor, and what I can only describe as a legal observer, a smaller figure who held a data rod and said nothing for the entirety of our meeting. The commander was tall, armor the color of wet slate, the Harvest Authority insignia at his collar looking more worn than ceremonial. He introduced himself as Keth Varath Sen, Fleet Primary of the 2nd Varath Recovery Mandate. Second, he said. I let that word sit in the reception gallery for a moment. It has quite a lot of room to echo in there. I am Solon Marin, I said, senior keeper of the registry. I understand you are here to complete the extraction. Keth Varath Sen said that they were. His tone was the tone of someone performing a routine administrative function, which told me the authority had genuinely expected to arrive and find a remnant population, diminished, disorganized, the kind of species that spends 800,000 years declining rather than building. He had not yet looked at the north face of the hall, where the registry index burned amber in the morning light. I invited him to look. He looked. The index is not decorative. Each amber point of light in the grid corresponds to one cataloged name. The grid runs from the floor of the basin to the top of the north face tower, 600 meters, and across the entire 340-kilometer length of the hall, both sides. It was designed by the fourth generation of keepers to be legible from orbit. The Varath vessels in high atmosphere would have been looking at it for the last 2 hours of their descent, without understanding what they were seeing. Keth Varath Sen understood now. He stood very still. I was thrown back 800,000 years in that moment, standing in that field, writing names in the dark with a light too small to see by, and a certainty too large to articulate. I did not say that. I returned to my role. I will transmit the registry in full, I said. 4,219,644,008 entries, each one cross-referenced against your extraction logs. I have the extraction logs. We recovered them from a Varath relay archive your authority left in the outer belt and decommissioned 11,000 years ago. The harvest assessor said something to the commander in Low Varath. I caught the phrase for administrative irregularity. Article 3, I said. They both went quiet. Article 3 of the Varath Biological Compact. Any extracted population documented under Indigenous Sovereign Archive exceeding 200,000 years of continuous operation constitutes an irrevocable transfer of record custody to the documenting party. The extraction claim is extinguished. The compact was the authority's own instrument, filed by their own legal body, 430,000 years before I was born. Article 3 triggered for us 600,000 years ago. They had, by arriving today with a second mandate, attempted to exercise a claim that their own legal system had extinguished 600 millennia prior. The legal observer had not moved. The data rod was still in their hands. I could see, from where I stood, that they had already read the article. They had read it before they came down. They had known. I felt anger rise in me then, clean and old and steady as the hall itself. The kind of anger that has been waiting in a particular drawer for a very long time, and fits the hand perfectly when you finally take it out. I did not raise my voice. I will transmit the registry, I said again. I would like your fleet commander to countersign the record custody confirmation before the transmission closes. It is a formality. The transfer occurred 600,000 years ago, but I prefer the record to be clean. Keth Varath Sen countersigned. He used the old Harvest Authority seal. His hand did not shake, which I respected. His eyes, when he looked up from the document, had the look of someone doing a calculation and finding the result genuinely difficult to absorb. We had, at last count, 38 settled systems, 112 billion people, and a resonance grid running on Varath-derived architecture at 600% of rated output across every inhabited system we had reached in 800,000 years. All of it built by the ones they did not want. I transmitted the registry in full. 4,219,644,008 names, radiating out on the harvest frequency across every receiver in known space. Not as a threat. Not as a demonstration, as a record, which is what it has always been. The most fundamental thing my grandmother understood when she stood in a field in the dark and refused to let the absence of 4 billion people go unwritten. Keth Varath Sen and his people returned to their vessels. I watched them climb. The 7 ships turned and ran transit lines for the outer boundary in formation, slow and orderly, the way a body of people leaves a room when they have understood something they cannot ununderstand. I walked back through the primary archive corridor. The amber light of the registry index ran the length of the hall on both sides of me. 4 billion points of accounting in the morning air. I stopped at entry 1. My grandmother's handwriting, optically rendered from the original logbook, preserved in the first gallery case on the left side of the corridor. 14 lines. The first 14 names she wrote down before she ran out of light and had to stop and wait for morning. She did not stop counting. She waited for morning and continued. I went back to the index audit. There was still work to do, and the record does not keep itself.